Welcome to Commander Central, episode 23. We are either 3 months too late or 9 months too early for Halloween, but whatever it is, we're going to talk about graveyards here today. Specifically, how tough it is to dig up a body when the ground is frozen, I think is what we're going to get into.
You just need a torch.
You need to,
and a
right, there we
shovel.
go. And most good medical schools will give you $100 per corpse, so that's the secret for us paying for our magic collections. So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about games we played, social media, and anything newsworthy in the world of Magic. As always, I am Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.
How was everyone's week?
I'm not sick anymore.
You still sound a little bit,
Yeah,
janky.
I can play on Tuesday.
All right. Yeah, you weren't there Tuesday, and Chris was not either because he had scouts.
Yep. My family has the plague. They can stay away from me.
You've managed to avoid it yourself so far?
Well, see, I always get my flu shot, and this is a very controversial subject for some people about vaccines. You know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
But I'm always up to date on everything like that, so I don't catch any of these bugs. But apparently, neither of my wife or my son has a flu shot this year, and they ate it hard.
I didn't get one this year. Usually I do, and not just because I forgot. Like I kept being like, next week I'll go get it, and now it's January, and I just didn't do it. But I've managed to not get it so far this year. I do have a story to tell, and you guys know the basics of it, but since you weren't there on Tuesday, I will tell you about the collection briefly that I went to buy on Tuesday.
Okay.
And I posted some pictures on Twitter, so if you follow us, you'll see the one nice pull I had from the collection, but I'll tell the story here briefly. I got contacted on Tuesday by someone I'd bought a collection from previously who said, this friend of mine found some Magic cards and mentioned he was going to sell them. Would you be interested? So sure, pass the information on. And the guy reached out to me like 10 minutes later and said, I've got some Magic cards. Would you like to buy them? I just want to get rid of them.
Cool.
Sure. How much are we talking here?
Yep.
Meaning how much, like how many cards, like a collection. But the guy just responded back $10. I'm like, oh, well, at that point I didn't care. I'm like, $10. If it's like a box of Dragon's Maze, I'm probably going to be okay at $10. So I'm like, all right, that's fine. Where do you want to meet? And he just gave me his address. I'm like, all right, that's fine. So I left work a little bit early, stopped at the bank, got my $10 out because I didn't have any cash. I mean, I had to get 20 out because that's what the ATM lets you take. Drove out to his address, and this was out. We're out in the middle of nowhere, pretty much.
And you went alone?
And I went alone. Usually I take somebody. Usually I call Max or something, but he was sick. And I'm like, we're not going to split a $10 collection anyway. Like usually we'll go halvesies or something. And I'm like, whatever. I'll just go out there and buy it. He's sick. It's $10. It's going to be a bunch of Dragon's Maze garbage, whatever. It's fine. So I get out there. I'm GPSing. I find the address. And it's, turn left down Joe's Road. Turn right down Pine Road, turn left down Bill's Road. So it was out there. And I pulled up, and the first thing I see is half a deer carcass hanging from a swing set is in the front yard.
Yes.
And deer season's been over a while now.
Oh, bow just ended 2 weeks ago.
Is it? Okay, all right.
Season just ended.
So maybe and it was half butchered. It wasn't like it was just a dead deer there, but I mean,
These are my kind of people.
Somebody hadn't finished butchering the deer. But I'm like, okay, well, this isn't too. It looked a little murdery. It was like it was kind of a murder house, but it wasn't. I was a little bit concerned, but I'm like, I'm a big guy. I'll probably be okay. So I got out and walked up to the door, and the guy answered it, and he wasn't like wearing a skin suit or anything, so there was no additional warning bells. So I stepped inside, and he had a shoebox on the table. But first he says, I was thinking about these cards and how much I paid for them. I'm going to have to get 20 for them. I'm like, come on. I'm like, so first then I'm annoyed because he said 10, and I believe at this point he's kind of trying to hustle me. So I'm like, okay, but I had 20. I got a 20 out, so I flipped open the lid of the shoebox, and it's all old stuff. I didn't dig through anything because ethically my rule kind of is if I know precisely what the cards are, I don't want to lie to the person or mislead them. But if I don't know exactly, if I'm just like hoping it looks good, then I'm fine. And I'm like, oh, that stuff's pretty old. Okay, I don't want to look any deeper and have it be good, but I'm like, it's worth. I'm like, I'll pay him 20. So I gave him 20 and left, and drove straight to the card shop for Commander Night. Carried the box in, sat it down. We started shuffling up for a game, and I started casually going through it with a friend of ours, Blake, as we were playing. And literally the first card I flipped in a group of cards was an Ensnaring Bridge, which is roughly $40-ish. So I'm like, oh well, I'm fine then. I got nothing else to worry about. So we're going through the cards as we're playing. There really wasn't a lot. I mean, when all was said and done, I think the Ensnaring Bridge was the second most valuable card, and there wasn't anything else over 5. So
Wow.
it wasn't a great collection beyond that, except for I grabbed like one of the last bundles. And by bundles, I mean cards wrapped in rubber bands.
Oh no.
Luckily,
I see that a lot.
Luckily, they were sleeved in like these old school yellowed sleeves. So the rubber bands weren't touching the cards because the rubber bands were so old they had kind of gotten crusty and sticky, and so it left like a big brown mark across the sleeve, but not the card, because the top card in that last bundle was a Gaia's Cradle
Nice.
in almost perfect shape.
Get
So-
lucky every now and then.
Yeah, so I'm like,
Wow.
all right, that worked out okay for me. So that was my adventure in gaming on Tuesday. Was I got a Gaia's Cradle for $20.
I was just sitting here doped up on NyQuil and cough medicine, so same thing.
Right.
Yeah, you sent me a text about that, and my first words were, "Is it real?"
I said the same thing.
One of the guys in the shop, he's like, really? Everyone boo Dana, boo him. And like literally the whole shop like booed me for pulling a Gaia's Cradle from the package. But the shop owner's like, you want me to check if that's real? And I'm like, sure. So he went over and did the test on it. But I didn't think it would be a fake card in a bundle of stuff in a shoebox that no one had touched for 10 or 15 years.
I wouldn't think so neither, but you never know.
You never know.
Lately, it's been a real common issue with fakes floating around.
Yes.
So.
So I have to ask, was this house worse than the meth house we
It
went
was
to?
not as sketchy as the meth house we went
Okay.
to. Not at all. Even the dead deer was that I could have been like, it's just a guy who's hunting who hasn't finished butchering his deer yet. We're in Wisconsin. That's a thing. Versus the meth house was a meth house. That's what it is.
There were some places like that. I know when I bought my first motorcycle, we went out to a place and our GPS got turned around and we were on some road and there were 2 cornfields on either side of the road. And these cornfields were literally up to the blacktop. There was no ditch. And it was literally looking and we're like, this is like Children of the Corn shit right here.
So we can't really actually probably talk too much about games we played because you guys didn't play games this week.
Nope.
But Max is a new deck.
I finished Crush with a few cards on the way.
So you probably won't have it for this
This
week,
week.
but the following week you should
Correct.
have Crash. How about you, Chris? Anything exciting in terms of decks or anything you're building?
Not really.
You're taking a crack at one of Max's decks, so you're like doing a version of his Dramoka deck or something?
Oh, I'm totally going to modify that Dramoka deck.
He did well with Brago.
He gave me permission, so I'm going to go hard
Nice.
into it.
All right, I'll be curious to see how that turns out as well. We'll talk about that in coming weeks once Crash is done and once the modified Dramoka are done. How about news? Anything this week in World of Magic?
Yeah, we had some standard bans come down on Monday.
And some pretty serious. There wasn't like one card. They banned
Four cards.
Four total cards.
Let
And
me pull it up here.
2 in each deck.
Yep. So they hit the energy decks and the Ramanap red decks. They banned Rogue Refiner and Attune with Aether.
Yep.
And then Rampaging Ferocidon and Ramanap Ruins got banned.
Yes, they did.
So Chris is our resident standard player. What do you think about this shaking the format up?
It doesn't hurt red surprisingly hard. It does kill Teamer Energy, though.
Yeah, Attune alone kills it.
Yep. A lot of the standard players saw Attune getting banned. They saw that card for sure. Ferocidon caught everyone off guard, but I understand it because of the vampire and the token theme that is now a viable thing in standard, and Ferocidon just eats that alive.
It really opens up tokens as an archetype that
Yep.
wasn't something you could really play before.
Yeah. Well, with Ferocidon, players can't gain life, so that completely
Right.
turns off vampires.
All the 1/1 lifelinkers. Yep.
Yep.
It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out because people have been pretty unhappy with standard for the last year for the most part.
And Ramanap Ruins, I don't know why they banned that one. Of all of them, I'm not quite sure on that one.
What was I was reading somewhere, and I've also heard this repeated on a different podcast, that statistically speaking, that was the strongest deck. It's just that it was the one that folded to Teamer Energy the easiest.
Yep.
So you had a balance where red was the strongest deck, but Teamer Energy was keeping it in check, even though it wasn't that great against any other deck, but it was really good against red.
Yep. I played the modified deck on Friday with my Merfolk for standard and took them in 2 games hard.
Nice. Well, good. Hopefully standard gets to be a good experience for people because even though I don't play it, I hate to see everyone be constantly annoyed with it.
Yeah.
So
I think it should be good. We'll find out when, Corset and then Dominaria comes out, and they probably screw something up again, they're gonna have to do another banning.
There's a whole lot of things they could do with a core set though to shake
True.
up standard that you can't do without having a core set in
I
terms
will
of
be
reprints
playing
and
the
stuff.
Sarah Angels all day long.
Right. All Shivan Dragons for Chris.
Oh lordy.
The thing is, though, like for a core set, if you think about this, if they reprint any of the staples that they used to, Singer Vampire becomes a thing again.
Yep.
Yeah. That's straight. I mean,
You have a Lord in standard right now for vampires and all these vampire abilities, and let's just drop a 4/4 Singer Vampire into this deck as well.
that
It's a
would
bomb.
be fantastic to see, just to see it get played like that.
Oh, I'm sure it won't, but it'd be awesome.
Well, if you want to get a hold of us, you can reach us on social media.
You can find us on Twitter at CMDR Central. Search us up on Facebook, Commander Central. Online at cmdrcentral.com, and YouTube search Commander Central.
And of course, we are on Patreon. If you feel like you want to support the show, check out our awards we have there at Patreon by searching CMDR Central.
All right. Well, let's talk about graveyards. And we're not really talking about digging up bodies, although we can if you want to get a hold of us on social media and discuss your best techniques for digging up bodies. We'll listen.
So speaking of graveyards, seeing how we're talking about graveyards, you know what the first thing was when I walked in the door today?
What?
Max watching some show, and it has Drew Barrymore on it. He's like, oh yeah, she's a zombie, and they like eat people, and they'd like change their lives. I'm like, when we're talking about graveyards today, what is going
I didn't
on?
even put that together.
Santa Clarita Diet, I
Yep.
believe, is what he was
Just
watching.
binged the whole thing this weekend.
Oh,
It's pretty good.
I should get Netflix. You guys seem to watch some real good shows, and
I thought
I've
you
been
had.
having a problem.
You have
finding
my
it.
I
account.
thought you had Max's Netflix account.
Yeah, I feel bad. Just like, I'm just gonna log in all the time, and
Worst case, you're just going to kick my roommate off, not at anyone else.
I don't need Tim mad at me. I mean, I walked in the door one day, and he's just like, oh, like intruder.
It was because of all the blood on your hands that startled him.
We were at the graveyard.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Nice segue back into the show topic. So the reason we're going to talk about graveyards here is for a couple of reasons. Number one, we talked a lot about Scavenger Grounds at the end of the year about what a great card it was. And that kind of brought up how important graveyards are in EDH in ways they aren't in other formats. Not that they aren't important in other formats, but like Dredge just wins a game. You're just going to dredge, and when you've got your pieces flowing,
Yep.
the game's over. And yes, that happens in Commander in some decks too, but that's not all it does. Like in Commander, people use it like a second hand pretty frequently, and because games go longer, it's a second hand they're using for extended periods of time. That's just not really something that other formats have to deal with.
Yeah, they either play straight with the graveyard, or they just kind of ignore it.
Right. So we're going to talk about how to deal with it in Commander, because you have to deal with it in Commander. I mean, there are Kess decks I've seen that just cast those same removal spells or the same draw spells for 2 mana repeatedly all game long for value, or Marin decks or Carador decks who are just, flipping value town or running combos out of their graveyard. There's just so much stuff that it has to be dealt with, or you have to maybe find out ways to use it yourself. So let's talk about it a little bit. So do you guys think of graveyards and using your graveyard in Commander offensively? What do you think of? Like, what commanders or what combos or what colors are you most frequently, you yourself personally, using?
Green and black.
That's
pretty
exactly where
much
I
what
was going to
think
go
of as
with
green
that
and
too.
black. I mean, all colors have some graveyard interaction. Black can do pretty much anything with the graveyard. Blue and red are mostly instant sorceries for the most part. Or
Yep.
there's some artifact stuff there as well.
Yeah, in red.
White can do creatures and maybe some cheap permanents on occasion. Like a Sun Titan brings back.
Enchantments.
Yeah.
Open the vault.
Replenish. I guess white does enchantments as well. Green can do most things, but it goes usually to hand, not to play.
Yep, you
Yeah.
can pretty much grab anything, but
Yeah.
it does go back to hand.
Even some artifacts have recursion usually with other artifacts, but there's some of it. So it's available everywhere, but green, black, particularly together, are the combo that tend to really like abuse your graveyard. So what's the stuff you see when you think of like graveyard recursion? What's the scary stuff that you see that you think of, I have to deal with that right away? What decks, what commanders, what interactions?
Well, card-wise, I think of Living End.
Particularly in a deck like Marchesa or a zombie deck, or
Yep.
even a Scion of the Ur-Dragon where you're pitching giant dragons constantly, and all of a sudden, I'm going to living death. Like, there's 9 dragons in that graveyard.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one for sure that you have to pay attention to.
Commander-wise, I'm going to pick on Chris and say Alesha, who smiles at
That's
death.
why I didn't say anything. That's how you
Alesha
look
is-
at me.
Alesha is on my list. because it's relatively cheap. Like
Mhm.
some of the stuff you're talking about, like you have to have a lot of mana free to abuse it. Unless you don't, you're casting
Nope.
this little tiny stuff and it's being sacked to brought back to repeat itself to do it all over again with a Penharmonicon maybe in play or a Conjurer's Closet on top of it.
Yes.
The thing I find interesting about Alesha versus someone like Marin or Carador is you really got to build your deck around Alesha.
Yes.
Where Marin, you could throw all the big fatties into the graveyard you want because with those experience counters, they're going to rack up so fast.
Yeah,
You'll
and
be
you just-
popping those back on the field
and
quickly.
you can choose any one of them, just whatever. But Alesha is very specific as to what you can bring back.
Alesha is also fun in that you're running a lot of cards that don't see play elsewhere.
Yep.
Which is always something
And you're
I
in
like
horrible
deck.
colors. You're in Mardu. It's
Right.
not the greatest colors.
Marchesa, particularly the first Marchesa with the Dethrone
Yes.
is a real challenge to deal with plenty of times.
Yep.
Particularly once that deck gets a couple pieces in play, and you're like, oh man, I have to kill everything twice, essentially, or have some way to have things get exiled when they go to the yard, because it's tough to deal with it once it gets ahead.
That is true. Another one that's popping in my mind is Tasigur, if
Yeah.
built right, because Tasigur allows you to self-mill and then pull cards back. Your opponent gets to choose a card and get it back.
Very true.
My Glissa deck.
Yes,
is
that's
pretty
another
annoying. Particularly if you get like a Executioner's Capsule or Triangle of War kind of circle going.
one. Which you actually don't abuse that too much. I mean, like that portion you do, but you could do it so much worse when it.
Yeah,
'cause,
I'm
like,
not
it's just artifacts in general.
right. Yeah, I'm not doing like Mindslaver locks or anything like that. But
Yep.
even so, just being able to X-cap 3 mana to get it back into play and do it again is pretty good for
Yep.
repeated removal. And how many times have I seen or we seen a Gonti deck slam a Grey Merchant or a Kukushko or something and then sack it and recast it or just the Gonti triggers in general.
Yeah.
Tends to be pretty graveyard abusive in our meta. Or Sun Titan is always a problem.
Yep.
Like I've never seen a Sun Titan cast when I wasn't like when I didn't want to just sigh and go, ugh, come on.
And then I think the newest one that's been printed so far that's a big bomb is the Scarab God.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
Gravecrawler is super easy to abuse in zombie decks.
Reassembling skeleton.
Skeleton in my Tesa deck is pretty easy to abuse.
Archaeomancer and any
I've
spellcaster
got that
deck.
written down. Archaeomancer I've seen flipped so many times into an infinite loop of Rift or whatever gross stuff you're doing, Max.
Yeah. Stop looking at me.
Okay, so I assume you guys attempt to have graveyard answers built into your decks, but I guess I don't know that for
Some
sure.
of them I do. Unless I do not.
Now, okay, so is that because you don't want people to use it against you, or because there aren't a lot of good answers that only hit someone else's graveyard, or why is that in a
Well, first of all, it's a 3-color deck. So like I usually like Bojuka Bog should be in there, but I pull it off the table because it's a tap land.
Yeah.
Scavenger Grounds should be in there, but it's a colorless land.
And it hits your graveyard too.
Relic hits my graveyard as well.
Yep.
Could play Tormod's Crypt, but that doesn't play into the play style. It's just a wasted of a card. So I just don't put any in there in Alesha.
But the only thing would be Leyline of the Void. 'Cause
Could
it
do
doesn't
that.
hit your graveyard.
Yep.
But it's an expensive card, just like to buy one. It's an expensive
Yeah.
card.
I don't run any.
No,
Really?
you don't. You avoid graveyard.
I
cards.
avoid. I've tried Relic of Progenitus before. I just put Scavenger Grounds into Crash,
Okay.
so I'll try that. But usually I just play cards that interact with my own graveyard versus everybody else's.
And you just hope you can outrace the graveyard player, or somebody else will deal with the problem.
Yes.
Okay. I did not know that. I didn't know you didn't.
I don't play Rest in Peace in Brago. I don't play Rest in Peace in
Well-
Dramoka.
Now here's a question for you, Max, because I know my answer for this question. But is the reason that you don't play it is because you use so much of your graveyard to begin with?
Yes.
Okay, that's
in
the same.
both of those decks I
Yep,
do.
Same reason for me is that I
Okay.
use so much of my graveyard that majority of the really good graveyard hits
all-
everybody.
yes.
Yes.
Well, the one thing I've also noticed, particularly as I've gotten better at deck building, is there's not enough room in every deck for all the things you want to do. There's not enough room to have all your ways to deal with problem lands and ways to deal with graveyard and have all your draw spells and your ramp spells and counter magic and removal, and there just isn't enough room.
No.
At some point you have to probably punt something
Yep.
in most of your decks. I have blue decks with no counter spells because I'm like, I don't have room for counter spells in the deck, so I'm just going to have to count on removal and responses because I just don't have room for 3 counter spells. And so I mean, maybe graveyard in some situations is the thing you have to punt.
I
No,
guess
I
I do
guess-
one spell. I run Stonecloaker in Brago,
Sure, because then you can blink it and
but
abuse
it's
it.
more for the abuse of saving my stuff than exiling a card. That's just
Okay.
icing on the cake, and I usually forget about it anyway. So
Now, if I build a deck that I'm not going to use anything in the graveyard, then I would definitely put in the graveyard hate.
Now I run Rest in Peace in my Sphinx deck,
Yeah, you do.
yeah,
and I mainly put it in there because at one point I was looking at the deck and I realized I literally had nothing that cared about the graveyard, and I had I had opened a foil Rest in Peace, so I put it in the deck just to try it out, and it shuts down so many other decks.
Yes, it does.
Now, if I was using my own graveyard, I'd be probably much more hesitant to run it. But in that deck that doesn't care about my graveyard at all, there are so many times I can drop that Rest in Peace, and the Marchesa player just shrugs and goes, "Oh well, I'm screwed now." Until I draw a Chaos Warp, is just one answer to it.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's worth running those cards, but it shuts you down too.
and here's a question for you, because I play Ural,
Yep.
and you play Sigarda. Do you run Rest in Peace in Sigarda?
I don't because of now that's where
Because
at
I
one
really
point in
want
time
to
I
put
had
it
it
in,
there.
but I can't do it.
The problem with that was so many times replenish and open the vaults
Yep.
win you a game. And I've found myself in situations where like I played a Rest in Peace and exiled graveyards and then top decked replenish the next turn or something. Like literally I did that once. And I think that's when I pulled Rest in
Okay,
Peace
yep.
out. And I switched to Ground Seal, which is a green enchantment that says players can't play spells from the graveyard.
Okay.
But I think I've wound up not. I think that's been taken out too because it just is too narrow.
Yep.
Because I mean, it stops flashback and it stops a few things like, I think it stops Gravecrawler because that's a cast.
Yep.
But that's about it. It doesn't.
Yeah, anything that's actually just returning it from
Yeah.
the graveyard, a spell that's doing it's not actually cast.
Yep.
Or the ability's not coming from the graveyard; it's coming from play
Yeah.
to bring it back.
So I do have a Scavenger Grounds in that deck because you don't have to use it if you don't want to.
Yep.
Like if I'm gonna replenish, I just won't ever crack the Scavenger Grounds. But I have nothing else in that deck for that reason because I screwed myself a couple times with it.
I'll have to see if I can fit a Scavenger Grounds in there. I'm running so many because I am in Naya. I'm running the Naya lands that give like haste and vigilance and double strike and stuff like that
Yep.
in there. So those are already colorless lands. I'm already up at my colorless quota that it's kind of hard to slot another one in.
Right. I'm trying to think if I have any other specific ones. I mean, Scavenger Grounds in most decks. Pachuca Bog, I usually run. I understand why people don't like it, maybe because
Yeah.
it comes into play tapped. And you can't do it on demand.
Yep.
You just have to hope, that person's got 10 things in the yard, I'm going to hit him. But there's enough times that makes a difference where you happen to draw it and look over and that person's got 10 things in the graveyard that you don't want around anymore. I mean, it does work.
That opening hand where it's the
That's
the
so, I
perfect
hate
hand.
that.
and that's your one black source, and you're like, I can't mulligan this hand. It's the perfect hand. I just
So I just
have
have
to live with it.
I'd have to waste this Pachuca Bog on turn one. No, for sure that happens. When you have decks that actually use your graveyard a lot, do you protect it or how do you protect it or can you deal with that at all? Because I've been wondering about that because I can't find a lot of good ways to save my graveyard.
Now for my Alesha deck, for instance, I have a lot of exile non-land permanent cards in there.
Okay.
And when I sit down at a table and I'm looking around, and like for instance, if I'm playing against your Sphinx deck, I know that you have Rest in Peace. If I have one in my hand, I will sit on it and sit on it
Sure.
and sit on it and wait for Rest in Peace to hit just so I can get rid of it, so then I can keep doing my game plan. Now other decks, I'll look at them like, okay, he's playing white, he could have Rest in Peace. Other ones could have other things, and I try to hold on to him till then, but sometimes you just end up blowing it.
Right. How about you, Max?
I struggled with this. I had a Gießen Geralf, which turned into a Scarab God deck, and this is the one part of that deck I struggled with was protecting my own graveyard, which ended up, like, it got to the point where I just took the deck apart because there isn't a good way, like you kind of said. There are cards that let you save your whole graveyard or one or two cards, but especially at instant speed in response to a Rest in Peace or a Scavenger Ground, it's extremely hard.
You could run some stifle effects, I guess.
Yeah, there are a couple things from Aether Revolt that let you put like a card from your graveyard on top of your library, but you have to really decide which way you build that deck. Do you build it to save your stuff or not worry about it? And that's what I was really challenging with, so I just scrapped the deck.
My Glissa deck, I've thought about this plenty in that deck, and luckily in that deck, for the most part, things that go to the graveyard, I recur relatively quickly. so stuff doesn't sit there. And you have to just accept the fact that at some point you're just going to lose your graveyard,
Yep.
and that's fine as well. The one deck though where it is a problem is in my Deshiru deck, because there's so few planeswalkers in white, and there's so few good planeswalkers that I want to like bring back, and I need to tutor them up from my library. So the best way to do it is when they die, find there's multiple ways to move them from my graveyard back into my library so I can tutor them back up again. But I've had multiple times where I've had like 6 planeswalkers in my graveyard with a plan to shuffle them back in, and somebody hits my graveyard.
Yep.
And then I'm like, now I'm down to my entire deck that revolves around planeswalkers. I'm down to 4 or something at this point. So I'm running Elixir of Immortality in there, and you can activate that at instant speed, so I can do it in response to something. But man, there's just not a lot of other ways to protect your graveyard.
Now, in white, I can think of 2 cards right off the top of my head that I know that well. There is True Believer, who's a 2/2 creature that gives you hexproof, and there's Leyline of Sanctity. So if you have any cards that,
because almost all those are targeting the player.
any unless it's like a mass one, like a Rest in Peace or something like that. But like
Oh,
Leyline
I didn't think of that. That's good.
or like Kalidas or Anafenza or some of the other ones only hit creatures. So like in your Jeru deck, there's no creatures are going there,
Right,
so it's not
right.
actually going to exile them. But those would protect you from the targeted ones. But
That's-
like
I
a
didn't
Rest
think
in
of that.
Peace or
Yeah.
something is still going to hit
Or
you.
like Aegis of the Gods would do the same thing.
Yep.
Imperial Mask, I think, is kind of like a Leyline of Sanctity, does the same thing. Oh, that's good. I didn't even think of that. That's clever. I like
Yep.
that. All right, I'll have to think about that for that deck. Because Elixir's fine, and I don't know if I want to run too many, but I just like the option because
Of
it's-
having a couple in there, so then if you hit them, cool. If not, well, I
Right.
guess we're going to have to go plan B.
Right, and it's not a particularly competitive deck anyway, so you just have to deal with it. But,
Yep.
So there are creatures like Max mentioned, Stonecloaker and Scavenging Ooze and Deathrite Shaman are both pretty famous for dealing with graveyards while also giving you value.
Yep.
Did you guys consider those kind of cards very often, or do you not because they're not on theme with what you're doing?
So like I mentioned, I run Stonecloaker and Brago, but it's more to save my stuff versus exiling something from a graveyard. I don't play Deathrite Shaman in any deck. Yeah, I guess I just don't consider him because I'm not the player that worries about other players' graveyards.
Okay, so you just don't worry about it. You just
Nope.
All right, that's fair.
Now, if I'm playing green, I always consider Scavenging Ooze.
I mean, it's just a good card in general.
Yep. Deathrite Shaman, I don't play a whole lot. I don't really play the black-green color combination. Now, if I'm, like, for my Mogus deck, for instance, I do play Kalidas, the new Kalidas. The 4-mana, 3/4 lifelink, and whenever a creature dies, your opponent controls, gets exiled, and you get a zombie out of it. So that kind of stuff I would play. But, like, that targets their graveyard like that on a creature base, not really.
What's nice about Kalidas is it's just a good card. The fact that it also defends you from graveyard stuff is just a
Yep.
bonus. I look at, like, Mimic Vat technically kind of works as graveyard hate. Like, I've taken creatures that were inferior to put them under Mimic Vat just to keep the person from having it in their graveyard because I know they're going to do something with it.
Yeah.
But that's not why you run Mimic Vat. That's
No.
that's a nice bonus, but that's not why Mimic Vat is in your deck. I've seen token decks running Night Soil is the green enchantment, and there's a white green one that I forget what it's called. Necrogenesis, where you can exile. It's kind of like Pharika. You can exile stuff from a graveyard and
Yep.
put a token in play. But unlike Pharika, you get to keep the token. So
You're
I've
not
seen-
giving it to your opponent.
You're not giving it to your opponent, which was so I get started on how ridiculously bad Pharika is because
Right.
of that.
She is only a 3-mana god, though.
She
Come on.
is, but as a tangent, though, if Pharika gave you the token, she still wouldn't be that strong.
No.
She'd still only be a good commander. She wouldn't be amazing.
Yep.
Those kind of cards are nice, but I myself tend to not run them unless it's part of the deck. I don't run creatures that deal with graveyards unless it's part of my deck.
That's also how you build your deck, so you're
Right,
very
I-
thematic.
Right. That's tends to be how I play anyway. So, but I don't see a lot of those either. Like, not only do you guys not run them, I don't see Scavenging Ooze very much just in general, or Deathrite Shaman very much at our shop.
No.
I'm surprised on the Scavenging Ooze because it's not a very expensive card.
No.
And it's just value in any green deck.
Now, are you running one in your Crush deck?
No.
You're not.
Nope.
Because it would fit your +1
It
counter.
gets
theme.
counters,
I
dude.
know, but
And gains life.
it took me an hour to cut down the final 4 cards this morning. I'm not going to figure out where that one goes now.
I'll give it a year and I'll tweak it for you. It's all good.
There we go. Right.
Sorry.
This is how we build decks at Commander Central.
Right. Exactly. Well, not to get off topic with this, but I've been trying to get him to put the Fertilid Obnixilis combo in his crush deck too. Just 'cause
Oh,
it's just so fun.
It's so janky.
I have died to that quite a few times.
I've died to it from Dana.
Yes.
So one time Dana did that to me. He had the wrong Obnixilis in the deck.
Oh
I did.
no.
And then it went to Fertilid me, and I'm like, okay. And he's like, oh, that's a wrong Obnixilis. I'm like, oops.
I did. That was because I had just put the deck back together, or changed something, so I had to like rebuild it. And I had Fertilid, and I put in the wrong Obnixilis. I went to do the combo on something. I'm like, this doesn't work because that's the wrong what am I doing? Oh, that felt so bad because I had it. I was all set. That felt terrible. So graveyard lands like Volrath Stronghold or Emiria or Tolarian Ruins. So how much do those guys worry you when you see those pop up in a game? Because we're also getting a new one, the green black one from Rivals does some reanimation.
The flipping enchantment one. Yep.
We don't see that many of them, but like when I see a Tolarian Academy, at least for me, or excuse me, Tolarian Ruins, or when I see Volrath Stronghold, I assume something busted's going to happen.
Yep. But then again, I don't see a whole lot of them. That's another thing, is I don't see a whole lot of them.
They're relatively expensive. Emiria, I guess, isn't, but Tolarian Ruins is over 10, I think, and Stronghold is closing in on 30.
Yep.
So I think that partially keeps those in check, but when I do see them, it's never anything fun.
No.
I think the last time I saw Volrath Stronghold, it was used by someone who played a Grey Merchant, sacrificed a Grey Merchant, put it back on top, and cast it again the next turn. So if I would have had some graveyard hate, I could have stopped that. But I guess in the case of the lands, at least you have a strip mine option or those kinds of options.
Which I'm also loving the new Blood Sun that was printed for options like that, because you're not going to get the hate from a Blood Moon.
Right.
But you're going to turn off those lands that are doing crazy stuff, and then they just won't be doing it anymore.
So now that we've got a week to look at Blood Sun or so,
Yep.
Are you still thinking it's going to see?
I have bought my playset.
You got your playset? Okay.
Yep.
All right. You did not mess around.
Nope. At 8, well, I bought my first one at like $750. The next day I bought 3 more at like $810 a piece, so they are going up.
Okay.
I have a feeling they're going to keep going up. We got to wait for Pro Tour. And then you're going to see pros playing it, and everyone's going to be like, oh, let's get on the hype train. And I'll be like, ha, 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 ha,
You got
score.
All right. All right. We'll have to check back. We'll do a check back at some point and see how a lot of the rival stuff turned out. One of the cards I'll quick mention here, speaking of graveyards, is Elenda. I kind of commented that the Elenda the Dusk Rose, they kind of missed an opportunity by making it so it was a graveyard trigger versus a destroy trigger. And in the last week, I've seen a lot of people online brewing with Elenda, and a lot of the things they're doing is there's a lot of old cards, like I think Overcrowded Cemetery is one of them, where if you have X amount of cards in your graveyard, you can return a creature to your hand.
Okay.
They're doing a bunch of stuff to allow them to recur her to hand from the graveyard.
Interesting.
And it's still not as efficient as just recasting her from the command zone.
Right.
But seeing all these brews where people are running like a dozen cards that don't see play anywhere else is fun to see people having to build decks like that. I've enjoyed seeing a lot of Elenda stuff getting brewed that's using oddball cards. But again, that's a graveyard based commander that's going to be a problem, I would imagine, down the road, and then you're going to have to deal with it, or you're going to get token swarmed to death.
Yeah.
That's true.
So Max, looking at your Kresh deck, because that deals with creatures
Yes.
going to the graveyard. If it seems to be a problem for you down there, like, do you have any plans to change the deck if it winds up being an issue with people removing your graveyard?
I think I would eventually, if that tends to be the problem, I'm going to switch it to more of a sacrifice deck. So I clear people's boards, make a bunch of tokens. So when I sacrifice my little 1/1, it only gives Kresh 1 counter, but then you have to sacrifice something, and Chris has to sacrifice something. So Kresh is still going to get bigger, just it's going to take longer to do, versus I'm going to sacrifice this huge 12/12 Hydra to make Kresh 12 more power.
Yep.
So in general, do you guys think that people run the appropriate amount of graveyard hate? Do they run not enough? Do they run too much? Or is it meta based?
That's kind of a hard question to answer, because I would say it's meta based. And some decks I think run too much because they're in good colors to get rid of it. And then some decks you don't really have good options for it, so they just don't run anything.
Well, it's one of those things too where like mathematically, even if you have 3 graveyard hate cards in your deck, it's pretty easy to not see them over the course of a game and and to look like you don't have any. Like if you only have 3 pieces of draw, you're fairly frequently going to not see those 3 pieces of draw. If you have 10 pieces of draw, you're going to see one of them, which then lets you draw more cards. Maybe see another piece of draw. Like some of these things scale into one another. Graveyard hate doesn't. You just either draw it or you don't, unless you're tutoring it up. And if you run too much, it doesn't stack. Like draw stacks or creatures stack or damage stacks. For the most part, you want more of those things.
But how many
hate doesn't
times?
stack.
Right. How many times can you get rid of everybody's graveyard to make it effective?
So you
That's
have
true.
So you have to balance this. I don't want to run too many pieces because it's redundant, but you need to run enough pieces to draw it consistently. And what is that balance?
I think, to Chris's point, it is extremely meta-based. In our meta, there aren't a lot of decks that function around a player's graveyard or every player's graveyard. I mean, we have one Scarab God deck. We have a couple mono green decks that do the Scavenging Ooze stuff, but I think in our meta, it's so minute. That's why I don't worry about it when I build my decks, because the decks that do need their graveyard, I don't really see that person enough to play with them, or I just know to kill them first, because if their graveyard gets online, then everybody's done.
And see, the nice thing about the graveyard, though, too, even if you're not running it, is you can see things coming.
Right. Yes.
Because you have full access to their graveyard at any point in time. You know what's in there. You know what could be happening. It's not like it's a hidden thing that's coming.
You also, there's enough exile and tuck and things like that that can kind of get around that as well. If you're running Swords to Plowshares or running Deglamor or Chaos Warp or something,
Yep.
it kind of gets around putting something in the graveyard as well, which makes it a little bit easier to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So some decks have that advantage too. If you're running a bunch of exile or ways to keep stuff out of the graveyard, it makes it a little bit easier to not have to worry about it quite so much.
There's a reason we recommend Deglamor and Unravel the Aether over Naturalize.
Right.
It
for
shuffles
sure.
it in versus putting it in the graveyard.
That is true. I would love to see someone naturalize my Ancestral Mask, and then I just bring it back and kill them and be like, that's just payback. Should have deglamored it.
for sure. I would say I kind of agree with Max a little bit. I think it's not so much that we don't see graveyard decks frequently enough, but we don't see the heavy combo graveyard decks for the most part. I think somebody has a Gitrog deck that's pretty dredgy, and like once it gets going, it goes infinite with the graveyard. But aside from that, it's mostly just graveyard value town kind of stuff, like the Kess deck that you're going to get Doombladed and then Doombladed again because it's only 4 mana to do it twice, or the Pongify twice for 2 mana or something. So you see that, or you see my Glissa deck where it's going to be value I'm generating out of it, or your Alesha deck where you're making tokens. But that's all stuff. It's low-key enough that it's annoying and it's powerful, but it's not the kind of thing where you're like, I'm going to go home on Tuesday night after my games and I need to jam 6 pieces of graveyard hate in all my decks because it's so broken.
Well, that's we'll go back to how you're talking about exile, like our removals and stuff like that. If you choose the key pieces in those decks, it actually shuts them down. You don't even have to worry about their graveyard then.
Right.
I think when it comes to worrying about graveyards, I think there are cards that you can run. Like Graft Digger's Cage is a great graveyard hate type card, but it doesn't essentially get rid of the graveyards.
Yep.
And the new one from Rivals of Ixalan, Silent Gravestone, I think is really, really cool.
It's an interesting one for sure.
And I'm looking to probably try that out, would be my next piece of graveyard hate I would try before anything.
I mean, most of it is relatively cheap, and there's a lot of colorless answers, whether it's Relic or it's Tormund's Crypt. So there's no excuse for not running something. Scavenger Grounds goes in any deck. So really, you can put options in all of your decks, and you probably should have something. But I think Max makes a fair point about sometimes you just can't do it.
Right.
You just got to hope somebody else takes care of this problem.
Yeah, I think a good analogy is I built Scred Red for Modern, and I was playtesting against Tron, and it is literally a 90% win ratio for Tron. It's one.
Right.
Sometimes you're just gonna come into a matchup, and it's a lost matchup. There's not much you can do about it. You just gotta hang in there. And the good thing about playing Commander is you're in a multiplayer game, so hopefully you can bank on one of your partners, I put this
Right.
in air quotations, partners taking care of that for you, so then you can deal with something else for them.
On a similar note, do you always bake in some manner of recursion in your decks? So, for example, looking at green, you can always run an Eternal Witness, or you can always run a Regrowth, or you can always run what's Max's favorite?
Seasons Past.
Seasons Past. I forget the name of it.
I think I would run all three, to be honest with you.
But then you get to that point though where you're like, that's one of those things, Graveyard Hate as well as Graveyard Recursion, where you don't have room for, you've only
True.
got 100 cards.
Yep.
And there are situations as well where I'm like, man, I would love to run. A Regrowth is so ridiculous. Like 2 mana to bring back any card. Or Yawgmoth's Will is ridiculous. If you happen to have a Yawgmoth's Will, being able to cast any spell from even if you just bring back a fetch land and cast a Brainstorm, it's worth
Anything,
a 3 mana.
yeah.
I mean, however, you have to then have slots in your deck, and it's one of those things. There's green decks I've built that have no Graveyard Recursion because I'm like, I don't have room for it. My Recce deck has no Graveyard Recursion at all
Right.
because I'm out of slots in the deck to put
Well,
anything
see,
in.
with your Recce deck, that's that type of an example is Recce's all about drawing cards, so you're just
Yes.
refilling.
Right.
Whereas like other green decks, like let's say you're playing mono green Nissa, God of the Hunt or whatever,
Yep. Nylea.
or Nylea, pardon. That you don't really have the built-in card draws like that. You only
Right.
have your other green card draws, so you're gonna want to play the recursion cards so you can get those other threats back or whatever else you need back.
But there's still plenty of times I'd be like, man, I would love to regrowth that Beast Within because I need a removal spell right now and I can't. But you just can't. I mean, every deck can't have recursion either.
Right.
Yep.
So are there any decks where you've made that conscious choice? If it's going in the graveyard, it's just gone.
Nope.
No, you always plan on having some
I
answer.
love playing with my graveyard, especially in Commander. I love playing with it. And I think it could
Interesting,
be because in our meta, we don't really have that much hate. Until your Sphinxes hit the table, and I just want to go home and cry like a little schoolgirl. But
We don't have enough. I would tend to agree with that. I think part of it, I think you'd see a lot more Leyline of the Void in black decks if it wasn't a $20-some card. I think if it was a $3 card like it was 3 years ago,
Yep.
you'd see Leyline of the Void coming out a lot more. Because there's not a lot of reason not to run it. It doesn't. You can cast it for free. It's only 4 mana. It doesn't hit yourself.
Right.
So I think that is part of the reason there. But right, I think there needs to be more Scavenger Grounds and more relics and more Nihil Spell Bombs in decks. As long as Max disagrees because he hasn't run it himself.
I
so.
don't know.
But so would you run more though if people didn't solve the problem for you? If no one was running Graveyard Hate, would you then feel you have to, or would you just be like, all right, well, this is what it is?
I think it's all, if I had to base it off our current meta, I don't know if I would change much because there isn't a lot of decks out there that recur stuff that
Sure.
is big and scary. I mean, Frank's decks do, but that's just how Frank plays is with his graveyard. And we got Chris's Alesha deck, but otherwise, I mean,
well, they're not big scaries.
no.
They're just little 1/1s. You don't
Okay,
have
Frank.
to worry about them.
Yeah.
Well, that raises the question though. So do you ever make the conscious choice to not use your graveyard so you aren't vulnerable to Graveyard Hate? Like, for example, my Glissa deck, I've done it. There's 2 things in my Glissa deck I made a choice early on because it uses a ton of artifacts and because it uses the graveyard. I made it a point for my next 2 decks I built to not use artifacts, which was my Sigarda deck, and to not use a graveyard in my Edric deck because I didn't want people to be able to meta against me.
Okay.
Now, at the time, it was a smaller play group. It was like 3 or 4 or 5 of us. So it was easier to meta against a specific person. But I'm like, I have this Glissa deck. I want to make sure that its weaknesses, if someone decides to stack a bunch of artifact hate, what would it be useless against? Well, an Enchantress deck. So it was an Enchantress deck. So I intentionally, when I have like one thing in one deck that's really strong or really weak, I make sure I have another deck that doesn't do that so it can't be something you stack against.
Okay.
But is that not something anybody else thinks about? You guys
Nope.
not worry about it?
I don't.
Not really. I try to have something of everything in there, aside from counterspells because I don't really play blue. But like,
You don't, do you?
no, if I'm playing green, I like to have a few options of returning things. If I'm playing black, I'd like to play a Reanimate in there. I mean, even as a one of, it's still good.
There's multiple times I've seen both of you two cast Seasons Past multiple in the same game. Seasons Past, then like 6 turns later, do it again.
Yep.
Oh, that's just feels so bad to be sitting across the table from.
Whenever I cast Seasons Past, I always do it when there's a fetch land in my graveyard, because then I get that shuffle. That's
Yeah.
always the land I pull. I don't care if like Homeward Path got destroyed. I would rather get that fetch land, crack it to get Seasons Past somewhere else in my deck versus on the bottom.
All right. Is there anything that either of you two want to say about graveyards? We've kind of hit a bunch of things, shotgun
Yes,
all over
there
the
is.
place. But all right, what do you
So
got for me,
I'm going to
Chris?
go back. I do believe this was our previous episode. I could be wrong on this. We talked about budget cards.
Yes.
Yes.
2 episodes ago, I
Now,
think.
we were just speaking on Leyline of the Void being a $20
Yep.
card. I brought up a wonderful card called Planar Void.
Which is less than $1.
Yep, it's a 1-mana enchantment that whenever a card's put into a graveyard, it gets exiled. So that is an option for cheap in black to
And if
replace
you
for
aren't
Leyline of the
using-
Void.
If you aren't using your own graveyard, that's a pretty nice card
Yep.
to just
Now,
drop.
the downside to it is that you still get, when it enters graveyard, triggers.
Right.
Because it doesn't get exiled immediately. But it still gets rid of it, so it's not coming back afterwards.
Enter the graveyard triggers aren't what kills you. It's the living death or the
Yep.
the infinite Gravecrawler being sacrificed to a Grimgrin or whatever. Like, I mean, that's the stuff.
I haven't seen one of those decks in quite a while.
It's been years, but I remember it at the time that was
Yes.
something where someone's like, okay, I'm going to play Gravecrawler and Grimgrin. And I'm like, oh, so now it's a infinite.
Yep.
So yeah, it deals with the things that need to get dealt with for the most part.
Yes.
How about you, Max? Anything you want to add here before we move on?
Nope. I'm
That's
good.
it.
I'm
You
not a
don't
big fan of the
care.
graveyard.
You don't care. All right. So for our sign out question here, this is kind of specific because I'm hyped about Dominaria. So I've been thinking about it.
I think we all are.
And I didn't get this question in advance, so I'm like flying off the cuff here.
Oh, you didn't? Okay. So the question is, give me a bold prediction for Dominaria.
Ooh, I got
'Cause
Karn.
I-
I got Karn right.
'Cause I think it's gonna be- I
Yeah.
think it's going to be a bold set where they do a bunch of things that are surprising.
Okay.
So I'll give you an example. This isn't so much it's kind of a prediction, but so I believe they're going to set up a second storyline moving forward. So we've been following the Gatewatch for a few years now, and we still, even though we're in Ixalan, we still are following Jace, who's in the Gatewatch. So I think they're going to set up a second storyline with a new crew of the Weatherlight. We've kind of seen the picture of the what I would assume be the crew with Karn and with Joyra and with Teferi. So I think we're going to get this new group of people with those characters. So we'll get a second storyline with them maybe chasing Phyrexians or doing something, going from plane to plane to plane. And we'll hop back and forth and do the Gatewatch for a block and then follow the new Weatherlight crew for a block or whatever. So I think that's one thing that's going to set up, is my prediction, is a second storyline following a second group of main characters that are not the Gatewatch and really not connected to the Gatewatch.
Okay.
Max, you got anything?
I do. And I just saw this question as we started recording. So
Okay.
Jace is going to become Teferi's protege.
Oh, really? Okay.
Jace is going to learn how to phase.
Okay. That would give him something to do. Interesting.
Right.
Would he just die already? Seriously.
I didn't say it's going to be a good
They've
thing he
kind
learns
of
how.
made him interesting, I think, for the
I
most.
hope he screws up the phasing and disappears.
Me
He's
too.
just gone for good.
Well,
Well, I'll give you one.
forward.
I'll give you one more. We're gonna get a new Mox. We've got because we've got Moxes before. We've gotten Mox Opal and Mox Chrome Mox. I think are all modern era. Chrome is banned, but Mox Opal is legal. So they've made Moxes in the last 5 or 10 years at least. Dominaria is where the first Moxes are from. So I think they're gonna. A bold prediction from me is we're gonna get a new Mox of some sort,
oh God, no.
and they'll try to balance it, and it'll probably still be broken.
Ban hammer and
Right.
standard
Yeah.
immediately.
Yep.
So I'm gonna go back to what you were thinking about them moving. Like a separate storyline. I would be 100% behind that, but I also would see them maybe as they're going through the planes, they're gonna find the other planeswalkers from the Gatewatch.
Maybe these will be the crew that like saves the Gatewatch.
I think that could be what happens. After you started saying that, I'm like, okay, so we got Jace on some random plane. Now we're going to Dominaria with the crew. I wonder if what's going to happen is we're going to go through a set or something, and all of a sudden they're going to find another one of them that's all
That could-
messed up or something.
Because Liliana could easily be on Dominaria.
And
yeah.
Ajani's there. So
Yeah.
maybe Ajani's like, hey, you guys need to go help these guys because they are
'Cause they're
not
idiots.
good at their job.
Because, Nicol Bolas is still the big threat, and I think until they deal with him, he's always going to be
Sure.
there, and they can't really get away from that in story aside from just dropping him off for a few years and then coming back to him.
Well, they are handicapped though by the fact that reoccurring characters have to be planeswalkers.
Yep.
So I think one thing nice about this is it gives them the ability to put people on a ship and let them go to different worlds, even if they themselves aren't planeswalkers.
So my biggest bold prediction is going back to Dominaria. Slivers are coming back.
I think
everyone's
for
going
sure
to hate Standard again.
I don't think we'll get them in Dominaria. I think we'll get them in the core set, which is a Dominaria.
July, yeah.
Because they split it was supposed to be 2 sets, Dominaria, and they split this, they basically turned it into 1 set and a core set. So I feel like they're going to shove the Slivers off into the core set, because that just makes sense to me. But yes, I think we'll get Slivers at some point in 2018.
I'd be okay with that.
I've got 1 or 2 more here. I think we're going to get Masterpieces in Dominaria again, and I think they'll be old border instead of like the fancy Yu-Gi-Oh borders we've got before. Or
Okay.
I think they'll use the old border for the Masterpiece border.
Yay, Starburst.
And I think they'll also maybe kind of not be good cards. They'll be Dominaria cards, so we'll get maybe like a Shivan Dragon or a Singer Vampire or a Serena Angel kind of cards.
Oh God, no.
But that eliminates people like playing the lottery to get the $200
Force of Will.
modern card or something. They're just a neat, cool thing to get in a pack.
Okay.
So I think it kind of threads that needle between having it, because I'd love to open a Sarah Angel in a pack if it's just a bonus thing.
I don't want to because I almost have all the Sarah Angels ever made, and I don't want to have to chase another one.
That one would be expensive. Sarah Angel of all of them would be expensive.
I have a $40 Sarah Angel in foil right now, and I don't need to go chasing another
Is that
one.
the Therese Nielsen one, or is it?
It's like a WPN promo. It's the original art,
Oh, that's not Therese Nielsen.
black
It was,
bordered,
Yeah.
like original card, but in foil.
One more I'm going to throw out there. I think we'll get a new cycle of legendary lands that are like the current version of an old land. Like we had Tolarian Ruins, that's a version of Tolarian Academy.
Yep.
Or Teleria West was kind of a version of that. I think that we get a new cycle of legendary lands that are an updated version of Urborg or Hammerheim or Karakas, like a not broken playable version of famous Dominaria lands that we've had in the past. We'll get like an updated version of those.
That's interesting.
That'd be awesome. I mean, ooh.
There's so much stuff
'Cause
they can do with
there is-
Dominaria.
I guess the one thing I would like to see, this isn't going to be a prediction, but the whole thing with the Sarah Sanctum and all that, I would like to see that go into actual story.
Or just
even.
the explanation of some of that
Yep.
stuff laid out in the storyline.
Yeah.
There's just so much lore from Dominaria they could touch on that I'm really hoping they delve into.
And then they ban Sol Ring and Commander.
And then advance.
You're done. You're off the show.
I actually saw.
But allow you to have 2 copies of Cyclonic Rift in your deck.
I'm okay with that. You're back. You're hired.
I think it was on Brainstorm Brewery this week. They were talking about that, and I can't remember who was making the argument, but said that they think Mana Crypt is a bigger problem than Sol Ring
Really?
because it costs nothing.
Yep.
And gets you 3?
And it adds an irritating. It's only 2,
Mm.
but it also adds that irritating coin flip thing in the beginning. So
Oh,
technically it's a little bit stronger because the life loss doesn't matter that much in Commander, and it adds this irritating coin flip element, and it's just expensive enough that the average person can't afford it. Whereas
Yep.
Sol Ring, everyone can throw in a deck. Not everyone can run Mana Crypt.
okay. I could get behind that one.
No, I don't think they're going to ban it, but
No.
I had never really thought of it in that context. But I guess that makes sense.
Yeah. They'll never ban Sol Ring. They wouldn't have printed it that many times just to
They've
have it
had-
hit
no.
a ban hammer.
And it's the kind of thing, if they were going to ban it, they would have stopped at some point putting it in the precons. And then after a couple of years of people getting used to not having Sol Rings around, and then they ban it. So I just think that's
Yeah.
not going to happen.
Did Cold Snap take place on Dominaria?
Yes.
Maybe we'll get snow.
We could. Yeah, we could.
I know we were discussing this at the LGS the other night. With the new Unstable, they gave us new full art lands.
Yep.
And the one thing we would love to see is full art snow lands.
That would be great.
That'd be very cool.
I wouldn't surprise me for us to get a set that has Snowlands that wasn't Dominaria, though. Like if they did a kind of a Viking-themed set or something like that, I could see them using Snowlands there and snow as a mechanic again, not just on Dominaria. Yep. But I think we'll get snow again at some point. Yeah. And Marrow on Twitter, this will be the last thing I quick mention before we get out of here, on Tumblr. Someone asked Marrow what are chances of seeing Yawgmoth on a card. And his response was, and he just said maybe. but with a smiley face. But it felt very much like he was leaving the option open for us to see that.
That man is a horrible liar.
Yeah, yeah.
he can't hide anything.
Right. He can't hide stuff. But I feel like he wouldn't have kind of teased it if there wasn't a chance of seeing it in a supplemental set. We're not going to see it obviously in standard or something, but seeing like throwback Yawgmoth in a commander product or something would be pretty fantastic.
That'd be cool.
Yep.
So, all right. I think that is it for us. We'll be back next week doing a decks we played. Until then, I'm Dana.
I'm Max.
And I'm Chris.